Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something huge, really complex.
Mm.
The Ukraine conflict. With everything going on, all the information flying around, it's easy to feel, like you're just getting headlines.
All right, just skimming the surface.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't really grasp the layers underneath. So our mission today, cut through that noise.
Yeah, trying to make sense of it.
We've gone through a whole stack of sources, articles, reports, expert takes, trying to pull out insights that maybe go beyond the usual narratives.
Definitely.
We're going to dive deep into Western policy, how the media framed things, and those bigger global dynamics that, well, often get left out. So yeah, get ready. We're about to unpack some things you might not have heard.
Indeed. And what's really interesting, I think, is seeing how these different bits of information connect. When you put them together,
Right.
you start to see the complexities. It's about moving past those simple headlines, finding the nuances, and hopefully giving you, the listener, a much more complete picture.
Okay, so where do we start? I think a good place is maybe somewhere that gets overlooked a lot. Eastern Ukraine, Donbass, specifically before February 2022, before the big escalation everyone reported on. Our sources suggest, well, a very different picture than maybe what was widely covered.
That's absolutely crucial. Starting there totally reframes the context.
How so?
Well, before 2022, you had the OSCE, that's the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. They had a special monitoring mission right there on the ground in Donbass.
Okay, so independent observers.
Exactly. And they were documenting everything. What often gets lost in the whole unprovoked attack narrative is that there was already an intense, localized conflict going on for 8 years.
8 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, look at the OSCE reports from, 2017 to 2021. They consistently documented thousands of ceasefire violations. Every week.
Thousands per week.
Yes. And not minor stuff. We're talking significant shelling, hitting civilian areas, schools, hospitals, and importantly, often coming from both sides of the contact line.
Both sides.
So while a lot of Western media was focused on, troop movements leading up to 2022, these detailed reports showed a region already deep in violence.
That's a huge disconnect.
It is a profound contrast between that on-the-ground reality documented by observers and the, let's say, simplified narrative in many major outlets. It really makes you ask, how do different sources shape what we understand? What do we miss?
So the official story, or the common one, maybe missed these really critical details from the ground. That does reframe things significantly, and I guess the challenges there in Donbass lead us straight to the Minsk Agreements.
Right.
We hear that term a lot, but the full story, what they were really about, how they played out, feels a bit murky. What's the kind of hidden layer there?
Well, Minsk was much more complicated than just a ceasefire plan. Our sources point to this kind of dual role.
Dual role,
meaning, yes, on one level, it was absolutely an attempt to stop the fighting in the East, a ceasefire mechanism urgently needed. But at the same time, and this is where it gets really insightful, it also served as a sort of strategic pause. It explicitly allowed Ukraine time to rebuild its defenses, strengthen its military position.
Wait, really? So it wasn't just about peace then?
Not entirely, it seems. And this isn't just interpretation. We have key European leaders like Merkel from Germany, Holland from France, actually acknowledging this. They basically said the agreements bought Ukraine time.
Wow, okay. That's different. But they failed. Ultimately, why?
Yeah, the failure. It's layered. First, huge legal ambiguities. For instance, local elections in Donbass, but who oversees them? Under which specific Ukrainian law? The agreements were vague. Kyiv and the separatists, backed by Moscow, had totally different interpretations right from the start. No bridge there.
So just stuck on definitions.
Pretty much. And then you had massive political contradictions. Kyiv wanted border control before any elections. Separatists minted elections first without Kyiv's oversight.
Yep.
Irreconcilable. Add to that a lack of any real enforcement mechanism, and you just got the stagnation. The conflict simmered on low intensity for years. It shows how even, well-meaning diplomacy can just hit a wall with these fundamental disagreements.
So if diplomacy, even buying time, couldn't fix those deep divides, it really suggests the whole thing was maybe more intractable than people realized.
Seems that way.
So where did the focus go then? How did Western countries start framing it and bring in tools like sanctions?
Right. With Minsk sort of stalled, Western rhetoric largely shifted. It focused heavily on Russian aggression, which, I mean, given the actions taken, is a understandable perspective.
Sure.
But our sources do point out that this strong focus sometimes crowded out maybe more nuanced talks about complex diplomacy or other ways to de-escalate. The push was for a clear, morally straightforward narrative.
Which can be useful for building support, I guess.
Absolutely. But it can also oversimplify things, potentially limiting options. Now, sanctions. They were presented very explicitly by Western powers. The aim was regime change in Russia.
Yeah.
Pretty direct. Inflict enough economic pain to force a policy shift, maybe even a leadership change, but the actual impact, our sources suggest it's been much more mixed.
Mixed how?
Well, especially with this rise of geopolitical multipolarity, the world isn't just one or two superpowers anymore.
Right, more players. China, India.
Exactly. So a sanctioned country like Russia found it could increasingly pivot, turn to new trade partners, new supply chains, Asia, Africa, the global south. It diluted the punch the West intended, made isolation harder.
Interesting. So the global shift changed the effectiveness.
Fundamentally. And there's another critique in the sources about U.S. corporate influence on Ukraine's sovereignty, its resources.
Like what?
Well, some reports detailed large American agricultural firms getting big land leases in Ukraine before and during the conflict. This raised concerns that, reconstruction efforts might end up disproportionately benefiting foreign companies, maybe not Ukraine's long-term economic independence.
That adds another layer.
It does. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, what are the wider effects, maybe unintended ones, of these policy tools, especially when they play into this shifting global economic map?
That is a crucial connection. Sanctions aren't just a switch you flip. They're part of this massive interconnected web. Economic, geopolitical consequences ripple out.
Precisely.
And often, these big policy talks can overshadow other forces, maybe less visible, but incredibly powerful. The military-industrial complex.
Ah, yes.
What role does that play in all this? How does it affect the chances for peace or maybe the lack of chances?
It's a critical piece and, often overlooked. Our sources really dig into what's described as the, expansionist nature of the U.S. military-industrial complex.
Expansionist.
It's
It's not just selling weapons. It's this huge network of defense companies, government agencies, lobbyists, think tanks, all with a massive financial and strategic interest in defense spending. And by extension, in sustained conflict or at least heightened tension.
So it benefits from conflict. Essentially, yes. It creates this powerful feedback loop. Defense contractors lobby like crazy for bigger budgets, more military aid. Research groups develop new tech that needs deploying. And long conflicts just fuel demand for more hardware, more services. It's a cycle.
A self-perpetuating cycle.
Exactly. The incentive for continued tension, maybe even conflict, can unfortunately sometimes outweigh the push for peace. For example, sources detail how lobbying by major U.S. defense firms ramped up significantly before and during the Ukraine conflict, pushing for those big military aid packages.
You can see it in stock prices, too, sometimes.
Absolutely. Stock prices for these companies often surge with escalations. It's a tangible financial incentive. This whole dynamic, deeply embedded in the system, just makes de-escalation really hard. It complicates genuine peace talks, even when openings seem to appear. Understanding these underlying forces is key to seeing where resolving conflicts is so incredibly difficult. It goes beyond just politicians or national interests.
That really brings it home. How many different players, seen and unseen, have a real stake? It makes you wonder, are there other ways? Or are these forces just too strong? So what does this all mean for how we handle conflict? Are there alternatives to this sort of heavily militarized approach to foreign policy? Are there other tools we just aren't using enough?
Absolutely there are. And this is such a vital area to explore. Our sources make a strong case for shifting towards nonviolent, diplomatic, multilateral strategies, things that aim for sustainable solutions.
Sustainable, okay.
These approaches often get less limelight than military action, but they can offer more durable paths to peace.
Like what, specifically?
Well, it's a whole spectrum. Targeted economic measures, but maybe aimed at supporting specific outcomes like reconstruction aid tied to real peace efforts, not just broad regime change.
Right, more focus.
Then there's robust peace building. That means going beyond just ceasefires, addressing the root causes, fostering reconciliation, rebuilding civil society, infrastructure, using international legal frameworks more effectively, the International Criminal Court, UN Security Council, to uphold norms, mediate, ensure accountability.
Okay.
And also supporting civil resistance movements, nonviolent movements within countries that can push for change from the inside, empowering local people.
So a much broader toolkit.
Exactly. These aren't always easy or fast. They take patience, sustained commitment, but it's a different philosophy, really, focused on de-escalation, long-term stability, the human cost, not just military power. It emphasizes potential that's often overlooked but could lead to more lasting, fair outcomes.
It definitely sounds like a call for a more creative, maybe less reactive foreign policy, thinking beyond just military options and sanctions.
Precisely.
And, talking about the impact of sanctions, it makes you step back and ask a bigger question.
Yeah.
About the legitimacy of using them unilaterally. It kind of puts the U.S. role in shaping international law, global norms, under the microscope.
Yeah, this part of our sources really offers some critical takes on U.S. moral authority when it imposes sanctions alone, especially without, say, explicit UN Security Council backing.
What's the core argument there?
The argument is essentially that while nations have rights to pursue interests, consistently acting outside agreed multilateral frameworks can actually undermine the very international order the U.S. often says it wants to uphold.
So it erodes the system.
That's the critique. The sources discuss the controversial legality of these unilateral U.S. sanctions under international law. There's a real debate among legal scholars. Do these actions, without UN authorization, actually comply with established principles like non-intervention and sovereign equality?
That's less about if they work, more about if they're legitimate.
Exactly. It's about the legitimacy and the precedent they set in a global system that should ideally run on shared rules, collective decisions. So ultimately, these viewpoints call for more equal partnership globally, less of what some sources term moral policing, where one nation kind of dictates to others. And this raises a huge question for all of us, doesn't it? About the future of global governance, international norms, especially in this increasingly multipolar world. How do we balance power dynamics while keeping a stable, rules-based order?
What a journey today. Wow. We kicked off peeling back the layers in eastern Ukraine before 2022, seeing the OSCE's role, how media narratives shaped perceptions. Then we dug into Minsk, that dual-role ceasefire and strategic pause, and why it ultimately got bogged down.
Right.
From there, Western narratives, sanctions, the aims versus the mixed results, the corporate influence piece.
Yeah, the multipolarity factor.
Exactly. Then uncovering that powerful, often hidden role of the military-industrial complex, complicating peace efforts.
Neutral point.
And finally, looking towards alternatives, nonviolent diplomatic multilateral approaches. It just hammers home how vital it is to look at multiple perspectives to really get informed on these massive global issues.
Indeed. And I think what our conversation really underscores is this urgent need for, what people call win-win negotiations. That's the ideal in conflict resolution.
Sure.
But that ideal bumps right up against the hard realities we discussed, those entrenched geopolitical interests, economic forces, the military-industrial complex, corporate power, this whole shifting multipolar dynamic. It's not simple.
Not at all.
So the provocative thought maybe to leave with is, what are the real implications of that? Balance the desire for sustainable peace versus these powerful, entrenched interests, especially in a world where power is spreading out. What does that mean for actually achieving peace that lasts?
That's definitely something to mull over.
Yeah, something I hope you, our listener, will keep thinking about. Keep asking questions. Keep seeking out different sources on these complex themes.
Absolutely. Keep that curiosity going. Thank you so much for joining us on this Deep Dive today. We really hope it's given you a richer, maybe more nuanced view of these critical global issues. Until next time, keep digging, keep learning, and stay informed.